The Art Assassins are a group of young beings who meet every Tuesday in the South London Gallery to come up with ideas and work with artists and do artistic things.
It's like all the arts in one. Like you've got your humanities and you've got your visual arts, you've got film. We even had like dance.
We used Photoshop to slice them.
We discuss what we want to do and then we go out, we work with artists and we do it, often culminating in some exhibitions and then generally a display of work at the end of the year.
The Peckham experiment was based in a health centre created for local inhabitants of Peckham before the NHS was introduced, and it was this kind of like alternative health scheme that used the community, a small amount of medical resources, and like a mindset of freedom and allowance to try and make the people in the local area better, I think.
It was founded in 1926 and the doctors who founded it wanted to focus on keeping people healthy rather than treating them when they were ill, because they thought that was too late. And it was a kind of place where people could come, and they came after work for working class families, and there was a theatre, there was a bar, there was a cafe, there was a playground.
The Peckham experiment was a social kind of, entity that allowed people to come together, and it was essentially based to provide them with good healthcare rather than making them go to the doctors once they were sick.
With Eleanor, we went on a walk and we looked at the outside of the building of the Peckham experiment, and then the next session we came in and did like observational drawings and like sketches to make a motif for her pattern, and then we did a session after that, and she'd already made the pattern based on our drawings. Like she'd selected really nice shapes and added colour to it. She printed it out onto material and then we sewed it into pillows.
With Ilona, we went to the brain bank. It was an interesting trip, as first time I actually touched a brain.
We had to like spit in a cup. They took our saliva DNA and then it was analysed in a lab, and we got it back and we visualised it. And we could see like the sequence of the DNA itself. And with Ilona, we're planning on making it into something visual.
We were quite interested in sort of the privacy of your own like DNA information, essentially. So we've been doing our own DNA tests and making a couple of objects with them. Like we were doing candles, and I think we're also going to make some fabrics and things. But then we've also been sort of exploring a little bit into the overall questions of what are your rights regarding your own body, essentially, like your own DNA makeup.
With the Lloyd Corporation, we were looking into social experiments. So I remember first we did a visit to the studio, and it was kind of interesting to see what they've done prior to working with us and seeing how they've worked with their social experiments and seeing how that could affect our ones. In the end, we kind of focused on a couple simple concepts of kind of trades, I guess, like seeing how one person's item could be compared to my own and how we could swap that around.
It was on like privacy, and we made like a survey of different things you'd find when you like forget your password sort of thing, like what's your mother's maiden name and stuff like that.
First, seeing the welcome collection, like when I started seeing the building, it was kind of interesting to see how they mixed science and art. Like they kind of took the feel of a museum and mixed that with the feel of a gallery, which was really, it's really interesting to see these concepts collide. Though seeing the archive was really quite fascinating, as The Peckham experiment took place 70 or 80 years ago, and it was kind of interesting to just see what they had inside of that centre.
The archive is pretty rich, so I feel like we've covered only the surface, even though we found a lot of stuff. We talked a little bit about the family dimension of it, the focus on reproduction and making healthy babies, and we looked at how that fit with other investments or schemes that really focused on reproduction and demographics and babies in Britain around that time. We looked at some sci-fi, even Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, Mary Stopes' mobile clinics. We used some of these clues, objects that we found in the archive, which we weren't really sure where they fit in the story. We used them to prompt our own narratives.
We started by looking at the archives at the Wellcome collection, and that was really, that was like my favourite part of the project. We did like some photo shoots, we did some short story writing, like writing horror stories potentially about the Peckham experiment.
We made the film with Nina, which was inspired by
what's it called? Food diaries.
Food diaries that Nina had collected, and then we made characters out of them, and then we tried to bring in symbolism from the characters we'd made and pretend to be doctors treating these characters based on these symbols that we created, and then it all came together in this very avant-garde film.
With Nina, we were working around diets and sort of like your diet is part of your wider identity. So we were looking at these sample script that actors play to help prepare doctors for like working with patients. You're basically like playing people with different conditions or like different personalities and stuff, and trying to factor that in. And then we expanded that to be a sort of full-on video and sound performance with costumes and these sort of hidden scripts and rules for these characters that we made up.
The Peckham experiment topic that we looked at is relevant to young people today because we've moved away from like a society where I think children and families have freedom and we can socialize in communal spaces, and now we're more reclusive, I think, as a generation. So looking back at a time where everything was different and more idyllic, even though like people didn't have the NHS back then and people didn't have like access to resources like we do now, it's kind of contrasting and commenting on our society today because there's something different about us now. Like we have more technology and we have better healthcare, which means that in some ways we're disconnected, unlike what the Peckham experiment gave to the community.
Considering like the political situation regarding healthcare that's going on currently, I guess in the UK and also maybe in like the wider world as well, I think it's sort of interesting to think about this more sort of overall model where like you're addressing wellness and well-being as well as just sort of more straightforward health problems.
4 of those around the sides.
I think Ilona's work was really amazing. She opened my eyes to a lot of ways you can hack your own body, and also the way that advertisements in healthcare currently are changing and manipulating how they use your DNA without telling you. And I think that's something security-wise I've never thought about before, as somebody having my DNA and what they can do with that. And I think she opened me up to really thinking about science within art as well.
It was similar. See, because they got the teeth there and the lips right there. Yeah. See, it's all this kind of lines up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Just exposed me to new ideas which I haven't actually thought of before, and maybe even changes my mindset. It's really interesting to see what's really out there. Gives me more perspective of what art really is.